I got high hopes. Do you want the same? Cause baby, all I got is high hopes. Do you feel the same? Do you want me, babe? Or is it just a game? Cause I got high hopes.
Good morning, Rose Church. It is
Morning.
so great to see all of you here this morning. House to House Church Week 2. We are so thankful to have you all here with us this morning.
Amen. We hope that you're having an amazing morning, whatever house that you're in this morning. If you need anything from us here at Rose Church, go ahead and click on the link below in the chats. It's our prayer and praise link. If you need anything, we would be happy to pray with you and praise with you.
That's right. We have all kinds of resources available to you, so keep an eye on those chats because that's where they're all going to be. Another great resource for you to get connected here at Rose Church is Welcome Dinner. So if you have joined Rose Church over the last several months, we want the opportunity to get to know you, and we want you to have the opportunity to get to know us. So it's going to be over Zoom, so please do not miss out. That's this Tuesday. Sign up in the chats, and we can't wait to see you there.
So good. Also, we have Father's Day coming up, and we want to celebrate all of you awesome dads, this one included. So if you want to go ahead and send out a gift to your dad or someone that is like a father to you, please go on our Church Center app and fill out a link, and we would be happy to send your dad a gift.
That's right. We want to celebrate all the dads here at Rose Church, so don't miss out. So now we're going to transition into worship, so please join us as we lift up the name of Jesus together.
So relentless, I am won by perfect love, wrapped within the arms of heaven, in a peace that lasts forever, sinking deep in mercy's sea. I'm wide awake, drawing close, stirred by grace, and all my heart is yours. All fear removes, I breathe you in, I lean into your love. Oh, your love. Lean into your love. When I'm lost, you pursue me. Lift my head to see your glory, Lord of all. So beautiful. Here in you I find shelter, captivated by the splendor of your face. My secret place, I'm wide awake, drawing close, stirred by grace, and all my heart is yours. All fear removed, I breathe you in, I lean into your love. Oh, your love. Your love. You're all I really need, God. You're all I really need, God. And your love so deep is washing over me. Your face is all I see. You are my everything. Jesus Christ, you are my one desire. Lord, hear my only cry, to know you all my life. And love so deep is washing over me. Your face is Oh, I just wanna know you. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made it, 'cause it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made it, 'cause it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. It's all about you, Lord. It's all about you, Jesus.
Caught up in your presence. I just wanna sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never wanna leave. And I'm not here for blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything. And more than anything that you could do, I just want you. And I'm sorry when I've just gone through the motions. I'm sorry when I just sang another song. And take me back to where we start. I open up my heart to you. And I'm sorry when I've come with my agenda. I'm sorry when I forgot that you're enough to take me back to where we start. I open up my heart to you. I'm caught up in your presence. I just wanna sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never wanna leave. Oh, I never wanna leave. I'm not here for blessing. Jesus, you don't owe me anything. And more than anything that you can do, I just want you. just want you. You can have it all, Jesus. We bring it all to you, God. Thank you, Jesus. You can have it all. All I am is yours. All my love, all my love, all my love, you can have it all. All my love, all my love, all my love, you can have it all. All my heart, all my soul, all I own, you can have it all. All my heart, all my soul, all I own, you can have it all. All my love, all my love, all my love, you can have it all. All my love, all my love, all my love, you can have it all. All my heart, all my soul, all I own, you can have it all. All my heart, all my soul,
All I own, you can have it all.
nothing else, and nothing else, and nothing else will do. We just want you, and nothing else, and nothing else, Jesus, nothing else will do. We just want you. Thank you, Jesus. We just want you.
Hey church, thank you for joining us today. What an awesome time in worship. And thank you for joining us for all over our house to house. If you're at a friend's house, you're at your house, you're on your way to work, wherever you're at today, thank you for joining us at our 10 a.m. gathering. We are so honored to host you. Once again, if you need anything at all today, either be right there in the chats, be amening, talking to people, responding to people, everything to sign up for, all connect group, everything like that for prayer is right there in the chats. Or if you need more information, talk to one of your host home or the home you're at right now, and we love to help you with anything that we can. Well, hey, we're going to get ready for our giving today, and if you are newer to our community, you've probably found out really quick that we are known as a generous people. It's actually one of our 7 values. We have 7 things that govern who we are, and it's in every convo and every staff meeting. It's the 7 things that help us make decisions, and one of them is generosity, that we want to be known as a generous church, not just with our time and our energy and our gifts and talents, but surely with our resource, that we want to live open-handed when it comes to our wallet and God's heart toward our life. And you know, one of the verses that everybody loves quoting is John 3:16, that God so loved the world that he gave. And really that's proving that wherever you love, you give to. In other words, your giving will follow your loving. And if you're like, man, I love Jesus, I love Rose Church, well, I just want to ask you a simple question. Does your giving follow your loving? If you've ever wondered, like, what do I really, really love? Look at your bank account. You love that restaurant, you love that clothing brand, you love coffee, you love whatever it might be because that's where your money goes. And your love is followed by your giving. So I want to challenge you today, and I want to thank our church. You've been so incredibly generous during this season. I know that money's different right now, and jobs are up and down, and new jobs, and furlough and let go. And so there's so much circling right now when it comes to the world that we live in during the COVID season. I want to thank you for being so generous during this season. But let's keep it up. Let's not give in. Let's continue to be generous with our money. All the ways to give is right there. You can text to give, 84321. You can go online to rosechurch.org. You can go to the Church Center app, which is the way I give. I love the Church Center app. Or go, you can send right here to the building with cash or check. The address is right there for the building. Thank you for giving. Also, right there in the chats, all of our team is putting the link up right now. You can click that link. It's the easiest way for all of our chats to give right there. Thank you for doing so. Well, today, I'm really excited for our Sunday service today. Today's going to be unlike really any other service we've ever had in the history of Rose Church in the last a little over 2 years. This is different. I'm going to be interviewing some of our Black community leaders here at our church. We're going to be talking and praying and sharing some stuff. I want to ask you right now, don't leave this conversation. Stay the whole time. Stay to the very end. I'm introing right now, and then I will close the service and ask our church to do 4 things during the season. So please stay the entire time. Sit down, pay attention. And I know there's many conversations going on right now, and maybe you're overwhelmed by information. You've watched other conversations, or maybe you've gotten a little annoyed or frustrated that there's so much going on. You've started to close your ear. I ask you, church, even before we get into this conversation, would you open your ears? Would you open your heart? Would you lean in, not lean out, and consider what's going to be shared today? It's a phenomenal conversation. Here we go. Let's join in. Hey, happy Sunday, church. We are so excited to have this conversation today. As I just said, today is a really important Sunday. And really for us, we wanted to not only have this conversation because of the narrative and the political and racial sense going on right now in America, but we were going to have a conversation with people that go to our church and really bring this home and have as you can see, a home discussion, a family discussion. You know, I obviously am very aware and very sensitive of what's going on nationally and internationally at this point, but it also hits us home here at our church and in this city and with our family. And I want to have much more than just maybe for you a name on the TV that you feel toward, but these are our people, these are our family. And a friend of mine said recently, and it really got my attention, is that when you're a father or a parent, whatever state whatever level of sadness your child is in, that is what the level you go to. So if you have 3 children, but one of your children is at a level of sadness, you automatically go to that level because you care about your family member. Well, right now, a portion of our family is going through a season and a trial right now. And it's, like I said, nationally and internationally. And we've been on a series called A New Normal. And I'm praying that this leads us into a new normal. You know, everyone's trying to go back to what was. I think we don't need to go back what was. We need to go into a new normal. We've been going through the book of Ephesians. And this week we are ending the book of Ephesians study through chapter 6. And chapter 6, verses 10 to 24 is about a battle. This invisible battle with authorities and powers and prince of the air. And this whole battle that we're in. And right now we're in a battle. We're in a family battle. I want to have a discussion today, not just with people that you might not know on a screen or a TV or a newspaper, but our family members here at Rose. And I'm so excited for today. And many of you know the people sitting in this circle, and we're going to share and have a lot of different things going on today. It's going to be a really phenomenal Sunday. I would ask this of you, stay throughout this entire session, this entire convo. Please don't leave early. Even if something maybe hits your heart or hits your mind and you don't know if you agree or what you think, stay involved. Lean in. Open your ears, open your heart, stay up to the very, very end. At the end of this conversation, I'm going to give a pastoral call, 4 things I'm asking our church to do. So stay to the very end of this conversation. So maybe as uncomfortable and as difficult as it might be, watch this entire session, watch this entire conversation. And really today, like I said, I want to bring it home. And, you know, Sasha, me and you talked about an experience that you had at our church, not at a different church or at, you know, you're from Florida, moved here for Under Armour, work for Under Armour. And so moved here working for Under Armour, and you told a story. And I want you to share a story for not only this group, but to the church, an experience that you've had at our church that I was pretty moved by.
So, I mean, I think for everyone in here, like, we've all experienced church hurt in one way or another. And just coming to church, you really think that, you know, you have a family here and, like, it's a safe space for everybody here. But I think it was probably when we were back in the BMAC, and, you know, Pastor Andrew was up on stage, and he was just like, hey, you know, put your hands out and, you know, grab your neighbor's hand. And, like, I stood up, you know, had Kiana's to my left, and she took my hand and put my hand out to the right, and the young lady next to me did not take my hand at all, kept it there, and she just didn't take my hand. And at that moment, I wanted to be angry, and I wanted to really probably say some choice words that I probably could have said and probably should have said, but maybe. But just with with having like wanting to have the heart of God and really just understand, it's just like, I was just like, okay, it's not the moment to do it. But so many of my friends who saw that happen were angry for me and really upset.
Because people watched it happen.
Yeah,
like they were looking.
Yeah, people saw it happen and like angry for me, and just it like, I think I was in a state of shock and not acknowledging it, that I was just like, I blew it off, because being a Black person in America, you know, a Black female at that, is like, these things happen to us all the time. And it's just like, we have it happen to us, but we don't really like acknowledge it, because it happens so often that it's just like, okay, it's another thing that happened towards us. It's another thing that we have to get through. It's another thing that, you know, we have to persevere through. And I think that that's the thing that hurts the most, is that as Black people, we have to persevere through things that aren't necessarily right, and like persevere to push through and just make it better, and just ultimately not reflect on, you know, us and our skin color, because like, you know, we're a big community. We have each other's back, and we're always there. But just having that happen in church, for me, hurt, you know what I'm saying?
In a different way than corporate America, different way than a job.
Different way in a job, and like just being in corporate America, you know, you deal with certain stereotypes as a Black female, like going into the office. Okay, cool, well, I gotta go in the office today. I have to dress a certain way. I have to play the part. I have to, you know, enunciate everything that I'm saying. The way I'm talking to someone has to be very proper. I can't have a bad day, because if I have a bad day, someone's gonna be like, what's wrong with her today? She got an attitude problem. And that's not necessarily the case. It's just like, everyone has a bad day, but if I have a white teammate, a white counterpart that's having a bad day, no one's bringing it to their attention. No one's calling them out on it. And it's just something that us as Black people constantly have to go through and just undermine ourselves. We can't be our authentic self in our environment. And that's something that I don't think the white community understands, and it's just like, okay, this is another thing that we have to consistently battle day in and day out, being a Black person in America.
And like I said, it's one thing to deal with corporate America in a job and in a field of work, but you have hopes and high hopes that when you come to a church, be that an all majority white church, I'm safe here. That wouldn't happen here. And then it does happen. And I give you massive props coming back as well. You know, I know for you guys in this community, you already get blasted for going to a white church. And people asking, why would you go to a white church and why would you go to a Black church? And for you to even want to come to a white church, let alone in the first time, and after that, gives you massive props to come back again and serve. You know, for those who don't know, Sasha serves on our media and AV team, and she was probably serving that Sunday. Were you behind the computer? I knew it. So she's serving these people to watch a screen and be a part of a service, and this young lady doesn't even have the human decency to hold your hand. And when we talked about it, she was holding her counterpart's hand. So it wasn't like, I don't want to hold hands, it's Corona season. This is far beyond Corona season, okay? So this wasn't like, I don't want to hold hands right now. She's holding her girl's hand, and she looks at you and says, no, thank you. And the fact that that is so often that you have to suppress that is the reason why we're having this discussion. Because anyone else, that would have set them off for a day or a week. And the fact that you have to deal with that all the time, I might as well not even deal with it, is wrong in itself. So, you know, first off, I apologize that would even ever happen at our church. Like that's not who we ever wanted to be. That's not who we are. And cool, that could have been a lone scenario. That could have not been. Other people could have had those scenarios in our church. And, you know, we've said from the very beginning, we want our church to look like heaven. But Sasha in that story is the reason why I wanted to have this conversation, because that's not like a man on a screen or a newspaper or a friend from Texas. That's at our church. Someone who serves, gives, and loves people faithfully at our community. That this is why we're having a family Rose Church discussion from those type of experiences. You know, and once again, I think we need to understand that this isn't just a history thing. You know, it's not just happening in the past and hundreds of years ago, that this is still happening. You know, which we've all talked about. My dad was one of the first high schools in the state of California to have Black people and white people go together in the same state or in the same school. Like, he lived out Remember the Titans. Like, buses pulling up, being put in the class together. Like, that is my father. That's not like generations ago. Like, that is 50 years ago. You know, in 68 that my dad had that scenario. But I do think we need to have a history discussion that is a part of America's history. And so, Lexi, why don't you share a little bit about history? Because I think many of us don't take history in school.
We do not.
We don't pay attention in history.
Oh.
And I think many of us, when things are brought up, we're like, that didn't happen. And you're like, read something.
Well, I think it's funny you talk about school, honestly, because if you think about history that's taught in school, elementary school, high school, it's rare. Slavery and black history is rarely touched upon. And I kid you not, I graduated from high school with the only monumental African-American figures I had was like Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. I was convinced that that was my history, right? And it wasn't until I moved to Jackson, Mississippi for 4 years, I graduated from Jackson State University, that I was exposed to how much history that black people really have. And like, it's just not talked about. And especially in Oregon, as I came back, I realized, I'm like, those 4 years, I've never had an experience as I did. I never had to think about how I have to present myself in front of people. As you were talking about, I have to think about how I speak. I have to think about everything when I walk into a room. I have to think about my hair. I have to think about what I dress. Like for those 4 years, I didn't have to think about anything because nobody had those pre-assumptions about me. And so as I come back, I look and I'm like—
Which you just came back,
Which
like
I
this
just
last
came
month.
back, yes. So a lot of people probably haven't seen me around. I haven't been here for the last 4 years.
She just graduated college last month.
Yes.
And so she's back. And so this is all very new to you, moving back to the PNW.
It's like my bubble of reality was popped. Like not that I didn't reap a lot of things that I wasn't aware of. It's like I see the little microaggression things and stuff, but I really was into like the history of why are there no black people out here? Like why is the diversity so minimal? I mean, black people make up about 2% of the Oregon population compared to 75% of the white population. So I'm like, why? But then if you look at the history of Oregon, it was embedded in it. It was created this way. I mean, in 1844, black people weren't allowed to own property. They weren't even allowed in the state. The law said that they would receive public lashings every six weeks or 6 months until they left. And 6 months, every 6 months until they left. And so like that's in the Oregon laws, that was the 1800s. And so there were even laws that white people couldn't marry black people, Asian people, Pacific Islanders. This was embedded in the laws. Like not until like the 1950s was it taken out. And so it was created for a white utopia. And so it's not that black people aren't moving out here. It's like we literally weren't allowed, like literally were not allowed to be out here. Like weren't allowed to.
It wasn't like black people left. They weren't allowed to come in the first place.
And I mean, people even look back, I mean, black people were accounted for as far back as when Lewis and Clark came over here. They had a slave named York that came with them, and nobody even knows. And that's what I'm saying. It's black history is somewhat like hidden and swept under the cover. And I think that's what's happening right now is like this, or everything around the world, it's like everything's just an uproar of years and years of trying to keep it hushed and not talked about. And I think the world is just, it's in our faces. We're ripping the wound open. It's like, let's talk about it, because it's just years and years of trying to disguise. It's like you can't understand American history without understanding black history. And we try so hard to separate the two, but they're so intertwined that you have to account for black history when you speak about American history. You have to.
Yeah.
I would even add that they're synonymous.
Yes.
Like we tend to separate black history and American history, but that is American history.
Yeah.
And like you said, with what we are taught in school, they selectively and deliberately left out those things where we learned in school. So now we have to seek it out. And a lot of us know because we did want to learn about our history as black people, but it is Americans' history, and everyone should take accountability to learn that history. So that's why I just want to add, I think they're synonymous.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and especially like the cities, like Portland specifically. You know, we were reading an article that Portland is the least largest city in America. You know, it's the whitest city in America with over 2 million people.
Yeah.
Portland is the whitest large city in America.
And I was looking up some fun facts. I can't remember if it was the 1920s or 1940s, but Portland had the highest, or Oregon had the highest KKK members per capita in the United States. And I'm like,
nobody ever told us
nobody ever talks about it. We don't speak about it. And so I feel like Portland's a very liberal state or city in Oregon as well. But as far as civil rights and Black history, I think we need to take an extra close look at that and see that we are not that far ahead as we think we are. We need to acknowledge it and bring it up and start talking about it, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Benjamin, you share a story about that deed that you found when it comes to.
Yeah, well, and it's funny too. I think just on those Oregon exclusionary laws, to just again digging in because no one's teaching you this. Like some of those exclusionary laws, while made illegal in the mid 20th century, weren't redacted from the Oregon Constitution until 2001. Right. Like
until 2001.
The words weren't removed from the Constitution until 2001. Wow. So it's like it's real and it's now. And almost to that point, there was a colleague of mine sharing a story at work the other day. He went and he bought a home. It was an older home, and there were, when you buy a house, there are like CC&R rules. I think it's conditions, covenants, and restrictions. It's like your hedges must be trimmed every other month to like maintain some type of like property value. And the CC&R rules from a while back said no Negro shall own a home in this area, and his deed still says that to this day. Again, while illegal, he bought a home as a Black man, bought a home, and the deed to his own home says no Negro shall own this house, which is such a crazy thing. Again, while illegal, like the fact that that's a stark reminder that you have to look at. There's something so liberating about owning a home. It's actually one of the easiest ways for families to build generational wealth, and it's something that's been that was trying to be put into law to keep us away from that generational wealth. And you're reminded of it, and I'll let you know because we've recently bought a home, and the process is not easy. It's not fun. You go to sign the papers, and it's such a sigh of relief. But I can't imagine flipping to that last page and being reminded that you're not supposed to be here.
Which is right now. Like that. This isn't like, oh, like 1910s, I read this story on this article. That is current day right now.
This was this year.
Yeah, this year that we're living in this state. And what you mentioned about buying a home is redlining, which many people have no idea about. And, reading articles, which obviously redlining being what started back then, but don't buy a home here, move out there, is unbelievable. And that's when we had this conversation. Dawn, I want you to speak into just being one of the elder statesmen here in the conversation, being around for a bit, and looking back what's been happening in the 80s, 90s, and now current similarities, differences, and how this has struck you all over again of dealing with it as a child, and now again as a adult with two children who are, one's in college and one will be soon, and kind of what's going on in your mind right now.
Wow, that's a lot, but I don't want to bore you guys. I was around during what I remember the most. I was around during Rodney King's beating. I was at Cal State. I'm a California kid. My mom got me out of South Central LA, moved me to Oklahoma, and what's different to me now, and I'm just going to touch upon a few things, I'm so optimistic because the youth have stirred the pot in such a way to, you're making those at the top uncomfortable, and I love it. We've had to walk on eggshells. And I tell everyone that I talk with, I said, it's different because I talk to a lot of men. I live in a very corporate environment on one side, and I have my cousins and everybody that's more in the hood on the other side. So I live both worlds, and what you were describing earlier. So I'm caught in the middle. But what's beautiful about it is how God has made me understand both perspectives very well. So a lot of times I'm the safe one to talk to for my corporate America friends, so that I can articulate to them what we're going through. Yeah. And that's a hard thing. And right now, I try to explain to them, I said, this is the first time in the history of us, most of us that are alive, that we're being heard, we're being acknowledged. Right. So I said, just like if we're talking about the subject of let's just call it, I don't hate to say it, depression or anything like that. There's a period. I said, you have to let people, you have to let them vent and get a lot of this out. This is the first time that they're even being heard. So I said, for you got to be patient. You got to be patient, just like when you tell us, okay, let the person grieve. Let them debrief. Right. Let them get the anger out. Right. Let them get the frustrations out. Well, that's what's going on right now with Black America. Let us get it out. Let us talk. Just sit there and acknowledge. You know, that's the big one. I explained to a lot of my friends, I'm going to talk on both sides, that what you're not understanding, looting is wrong. What happened to Mr. Floyd, wrong. I mean, we watched a person being murdered. All that is wrong. We're not condoning that. I said, but what you have to look at is when you look at minorities, you're talking, I use this analogy. Here's a Monopoly game. You get to go around the board 400 times. Right.
It's a lot of
400 times. Right. Now I get to jump into the game.
Right. Yeah.
Now, not only do I get to jump into the game, but I got to pay you every time I make a move. Oh, hit Baltic. Oh, hit the railroad. Oh, I'm paying you. How can I accumulate wealth? How can I ever catch up to you? That's where we're at. That's the reality. You know, when you see the narrative, and don't minimize the act for the narrative of the looters, which is the smallest percent of people. And I told them, you know, you got to look at, we're not looking for revenge. We're looking for equity. And the youth is demanding it. And for me, I'm loving it, Andrew. I'm loving what I'm seeing as far as the peacefulness, not the, you know, all those things that are articulated in a bad way. And so the youth, you keep protesting, you make those at the top uncomfortable. For the first time in my life, I mean, I'm getting something from corporate America every day about they're behind the BLM movement, you know. I look at more the BLM as a slogan that has been taken over from its original. I'm not going to get into all what's it originally about, but it's the slogan to be behind us. And for the first time, I mean, we're all in this together. And I can't even tell you how optimistic I am. For us, you got to realize that most white America, they just didn't see it. There's a book called White Fragility that helped me personally, because internally my prayers are all the time, well, God, I mean, look what I'm going through. And I'm a fighter, so but I'm just like, look what I'm going through, and it's not even being acknowledged. And I say this, and they're like, oh, it'll be okay. Oh, that's not happening. Well, it is happening.
Yeah.
You know, every day. You know, and these would be people that are closest to me, you know, without naming names or anything. And we have to understand that a lot of them, that's why I really love Andrew, Julia, how you guys get it. Most white America, they don't get it. So it's going to take them time, and we have to give them that time to process this. We have to, the bottom line is this, the change that we want will not happen without white America. Yeah, that's true. Bottom line. Yeah. It's so systematic, it's at the top. Everything was white. White's good, black's bad. I mean, that's the narrative. Every time you see television, where they show looters, where they show the black looters, they won't never show the white ones. When they talk about unemployment, well, there's more white people on unemployment than black, but they won't show that narrative. You know, that's not the narrative. So then they change it to, oh, it's a percentage. Well, it's a higher percentage. And so it's tough for us to always endure that. We understand that, but they don't understand that because of that. So give them, you know, be patient with them too. Just know that a lot of times they just don't see it. So what I tell all my white counterparts, you know what, just acknowledge. Be patient and listen, just acknowledge. Because they all want to know what to do. See, the one thing we know, how to get to
How many phone calls have all you got?
America?
What do you want from me? What should I do? What should I do?
Right, what should I do? Because they want a quick fix and a quick, it's not going to be fast. This is going to be a process. And I love that you all are forcing that process. That's the part that I love, and I see optimism, whereas a lot of times, you know, a lot of America, they don't see that. So don't worry about them changing the narrative, and they try to talk about the looters and why they burning buildings and all this stuff. That's just them deflecting. That's all that is them deflecting. I don't care what's going on. Murder is murder. Wrong. Don't leave the narrative. And I won't use another analogy that's coming in my head, but you know, I won't even go there. But the bottom line is,
Yeah, you're going to get there eventually. You said 3 times, I'm not going to say it, which means you're going to say it.
You guys want me to go there? Well,
Do it.
There's always post-editing anyway.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say this, and I just use a better analogy. It's a young lady maybe gets, let's just say a rape victim. A lot of times they don't come forward because they start talking about, what did you have on? What was the skirt? What was it? Who gives a rip? It doesn't matter. The rape is what's going on here. It's not about what she had. I don't care if she had on a thong. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That is wrong. It's the same thing here. So just know you have 2 ends too. You have a far right and you have a far left. And they both are vying for us. And the only way that they win is if we stay divided. It's the only way. If we unite, we win. We can start pushing our narrative, the right narrative. We can do this all together. So it's going to be a long journey, guys. But please do not stop this momentum that is going on and keep corporate America, keep them uncomfortable. Because the only way you're going to really get their attention is when they think it's going to get them in the pocketbooks. That's their speech.
Yeah.
That's what resonates to them. Right. We're saving lives. They're worried about this. So Andrew, I feel we're moving in the right direction. I applaud you for even having this type of forum so that we can speak. I could just give, story after story. One that just happened last year for my son who left. And I'm saying this for those that are in our community. I live in Vancouver, Washington. And I told my son, before you go to college, I'm going to try to prepare you a little more because the life that he lives is not indicative of what he's going to face when he hits the world. And I said, I'm just going to show you quickly a scenario of how it is to be black in a white America. So I took him down the street, and I was going to name the store, but I'm not going to. But it's on the corner of 15th and 164th in Vancouver. And I said, I'm dressed in a suit. I'm suited and booted. And I said, watch, I'm going to go in the store, and then within 30 seconds, you're going to have somebody on the aisle, and they're going to pretend like they're moving things. And I was just telling myself, oh, no, Dad, not today. It's not going to happen. It wasn't 5 seconds. And he's outraged. Oh, he is outraged. He's ready to fight. And so the conversation began for him and I to start understanding this. I shouldn't have to go through that. I shouldn't have to even tell him that, but it is what it is. So whatever you guys are doing in a positive, the protesting, continue doing it. That's all I'm going to tell you guys. Do not stop this momentum because it's working. And we're going to be better for it once we all unite.
Yeah. I think even what you're mentioning about buildings being burned, I've been very frustrated as a white pastor in America that we're more upset about buildings being burned than families being destroyed. And I'm not don't burn down the city. I'm not for it whatsoever. But the fact that we're more angry about iPhones being stolen than fathers being stolen is incredibly frustrating. I get it. Don't burn buildings down. Don't ruin our cities. And some of which were black community buildings that were torched, right? That's not what we're trying to do, But the fact that America then gets upset about that and ignores that is another indicative of the pocket of anger. And even what you just said is so disheartening because I will never have to tell my son how to react when a cop pulls him over. I'll never have the conversation with Cruz. I'll never have to do that. I'll never have to have conversations with my daughter about her hair or about boys or about whatever. But you all will, And I think even what you said, I'm glad that you're saying that you're positive because there's a lot of negativity right now. So I'm glad that someone's positive right now. And like we all talked about as well, that we're not even having this conversation. We're fighting for us. It is for our children and our nieces and our nephews because it's going to take a bit. We might not receive it all, but our children will, our nephews will, and that's worth the fight, But I think what starts happening, and to kind of segue this conversation, is like, well, I'm not racist. I wasn't alive 400 years ago. I didn't get on the ships. I didn't do that. I didn't say this. Like, like Pastor Andrew, like this conversation is not for me. Like I'm not racist. I would have never allowed X, Y, or Z back in the day. Like this conversation isn't needed. I'm not racist. But what people don't understand is there's a difference between I'm not racist and I'm not racially insensitive. Right. That there are people I think truly from the bottom of their heart are not racist, but their language is racially insensitive. And that's what I'm trying to begin to dig at. Because I think, like I said, some people are truly not racist to the bottom of their heart, but they're racially insensitive. And that's where the phrases have come in about microaggression that I would like to get into today, because I think that's when change starts happening. We're changing not just our heart and our mind, but our language and our questions and stuff like that. So, why don't you speak into a little bit about some microaggression stuff and what that is and some things that you've experienced. And before she does, we're going to watch this clip about a few microaggression statements. We'll see you in a second.
I was told not to stay in the sun too long so that I wouldn't get too dark. But what is too dark?
Wow, you speak a lot better than I actually thought you would. You're pretty educated. It's surprising.
Oh, you're really pretty for a black girl.
You must play a sport or something. Actually, I have 3 degrees. A bachelor's degree in informatics with a minor in telecommunications, a master's degree in human-computer interaction and design, and another master's degree in sports product management.
You know, it's difficult for me when people come up and say, you know what, I don't see color. Well, God made us all in his image. So are you lying or what? I'm proud of my color.
What a phenomenal video, and really to give some narrative that comments that maybe you have been making in the past. I've had many conversations and phone calls from people at our church that have starting to realize things they've said or narratives that they had in their mind and comments they've been making that were offensive and that were wrong. We really had just no idea. And I've been on a journey myself for the last 10 years of being in ministry, of learning what I've said in the past, and even during this whole season of the protests, everything going on, thinking back to probably comments I made in college or high school. And so if you're like on this, if you're watching today and you're like, I've said that, I've done that, I've heard that, like I had no idea, it's okay. That's where I had this conversation today, to open your eyes and your ears to things going on. And like I said, you might not feel like you are deeply racist, but maybe racially insensitive to comments or statements of things that you've made, like those clips that we just watched. But why don't you touch on microaggressions, maybe even from a church standpoint as well, being raised in church and specifically in white church, with me and other people at the church. And so, yeah.
I think a lot of the racism that I've experienced in my life hasn't necessarily been flat out racism or like being called the N-word or something like that. A lot of the things I've personally experienced is microaggression. And what that is, if you don't know what it is an intentional or unintentional derogatory term or attitude or reflection towards black people. So for example, if you're someone that maybe locks your door when a black person walks by the car, that's a microaggression. We can hear that when we're walking by the car. Or maybe if you move across the street or hold your bag a little tighter simply because a black man is walking by, that's a microaggression. And we are as black people, we are very aware of those things. We see them and can sense them coming. We can tell when someone's about to do that. Personally, for me, as being someone, like you said, grew up in a white church, Andrew has been my pastor for over 10 years. I dealt with a lot of microaggressions, and I think for me, it was hurtful that I experienced it more in church than I did in school, or now in corporate America, I experienced it more at church than I did in work and in other environments. And I always felt like people were for my praise, but not my pain. Like people didn't really want to hear anything other than my song or what I had to offer as a Christian. And so I think one microaggression I've always gotten or always been told is like, when people speak negatively about black people, I don't necessarily count to that narrative for them because I'm maybe a version of black that they haven't experienced. Maybe I'm slightly more educated than they thought black people are educated, or well articulated than what they assume black people are, how they're articulated. And so those are some things that I've experienced, but I know Deja's experienced some, and I'm sure all of us have.
For sure.
And so, yeah.
I think for me, like growing up in Vancouver, Washington, you're mostly in a predominantly white school growing up. Like that's just the way it's gonna be. And I'm more of a darker complexion black person. Like I'm not on the light skin side, like I'm a dark skinned girl, which I love. So
very beautiful.
And so I think a lot of my microaggressions I have ever been towards me is having to do with my skin complexion, how dark I am. Like one time someone has said to me, like, can people even see your tattoos? And that hurt bad. I was like, well, clearly, yeah, you can. But it's like they're going to the fact that, oh, you're so dark. Why would you even get a tattoo type thing? I'm like, wow, that's low blow. Like, why would you say something like that to me? And so I think that's one thing I face. And that goes back to like, okay, this system's not even set up for us. Because if you go to a tattoo parlor, what do you see? You see white canvases on the wall. You never see a black canvas of a person getting a tattoo. It's always, oh, white picture, a white picture. So it's like, oh, that's not even made for me in the beginning. And here you are saying, oh, can you even see your tattoo on your skin? And so I think that's what I faced a lot, is just having to do with how dark I am as a person. And so that's like just little things like that. It hurts. Like you might not intend for that to hurt someone, but that impacts you, because that's been my whole life. Someone saying, oh, you're too dark. Black of the berry, sweet of the juice type thing, or in a weird twisted way. Or I dated a white guy and there was like, oh, he has jungle fever. Right. And I'm like,
and it's meant to be funny,
and
or
it's
something
not
that's
funny.
a compliment,
That
but it's
hurts.
not a compliment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, things like that you just need to watch out for, because like you hurt people. Like I've had to heal so much from so many scars of people saying just little things to me that hit home.
Yeah.
And my face, I might show it in that moment, but when I go home, like I'm hurting, I'm crying, I'm like, I don't want to be black sometimes. Like I've had to fight for myself to recognize that I'm black and I'm beautiful.
Right.
And so I think just you guys, like as white people, like be aware of what you're saying to people, because things hurt.
Yeah.
They hurt. Words hurt so bad. And there's this narrative, oh, sticks and stones might break my bones, but words will never hurt me. It's like, no, us black people are being hurt by your words.
Yeah.
We're being
And
hurt.
even on the subject of microaggression, another thing that's kind of part of that is colorism, which Deja kind of touched on. Just the idea of like her saying that she's darker skinned, I'm a little bit lighter skinned. That's another narrative that's not being really understood, that I'm not necessarily mixed or white, but I have lighter skin. Deja's darker skin. I get treated better than her in certain situations than she does. I mean, if we can talk about even like in restaurants and things like that, sometimes I will noticeably get served better simply because I'm lighter. And that's a version of microaggression as well, because for some reason complexion, obviously, because that's why white is treated the way they are and black is treated the way they are, there's just a narrative of like when you're on the lighter side that you're somewhat better or maybe more educated. Even hair, that's another subject that we could go on for days about, but like I noticeably get treated differently when my hair is straight versus when my hair is curly. Like I know the type of attention I'll get. And as a black woman, I have to have this conversation in my mind even in dating, which is, oh, does he like black girls? Right. Not does he like me?
Are you dating someone?
I am not.
You want to have a conversation?
No,
hey, I'm just asking. I'm making sure. I don't know if that was your segue to like let the group know. No. By the way, I didn't know.
It depends who's asking. But
I just asked.
No, but to be clear with that, as a black woman, we don't sit there and say, does he like me for me? We have to figure out, especially in the Pacific Northwest, oh, does he even date black people? Or is he interested in black women? And that's a whole nother epidemic in our culture, in black culture, but in society as well. If we're being progressive, we want to be progressive in all outlets. And that's one thing that, as black females, I know that every black female sitting here has dealt with that, regardless of skin tone or colorism.
Yeah. Benjamin, why don't you speak into a little bit of microaggression when it comes to corporate America? I won't say the company you work for unless you want to say it, but you are higher up in your company and you lead people and lead teams. And
yeah. Well, it's interesting too, kind of going back to what Hiob said a little bit. I think if we're going there, I guess I'm going to go there because it's difficult to kind of like crack open the wounds a little bit. The stuff's difficult to talk about, but I think some of the hardest stuff for me, almost to the colorism bit, is like I have very vivid memories of, you know, getting called the N-word or thrown out of a restaurant or thrown in a puddle or pushed in a locker in school, whatever. But I also have just as vivid memories of when a family member said to me, like, you're black, but like, you're not black. Yeah. You know what I mean? Or someone says, you're like, oh, you're like the whitest black dude I know. Like, you're trying to put me in a box somewhere. And I think something that's really difficult in the face of leadership as well is like, great leaders understand their identity. And I think that those microaggressions take away and push away from our identity. Not only have a lot of us not grown up with dads, myself included, like that. There's a study as well that like the parents in your household help shape your identity, and your father specifically helps breathe into that identity and builds up your confidence and helps you identify who you are as a human being outside of what the world tells you. So not only is that a situation with mass incarceration and black dads not being in the home, we're losing our identity, and then to go out into the world and have somebody tell you that like you're not good enough to be there, and also like you're not good enough to be over there. It's just like, oh my God, like who am I? And I think that's really, really difficult to push through. And so I work in corporate America at a giant sportswear company, and it's been difficult to like fight through and dredge through and all those things. And then you get there, and I think sometimes the hardest thing for me is to not have a chip on my shoulder to those around me or people that I lead that again have no idea what we've been through or how much harder it was for me to get there than it was for them, because I couldn't afford to have the unpaid internship after high school and go to George Washington and like that's where, you know, Nike recruits only at top schools in the country, and so like it's easy for you to get a job there. Like I fought and fought and fought. So I have to push all of that aside to then be able to go in and lead with a clear mind every Monday and lead a staff meeting about whatever shoe we're gonna sell. Like it's really, really difficult. But I think to your point earlier, like we have a responsibility. Unfortunately, it wasn't our choice to be put in this position, but we do have a responsibility to talk about it, to inform people, to let them know, or else we're going to stay in that same rut. And we finally have some people's ears. We have corporate America's ears because we're messing with their money, and it feels good. It feels good.
They don't want us to boycott.
Nope, they sure don't. They sure don't. And so, yeah, we have that responsibility, I think, to lead from a place of grace. And like, again, it's not going to be an easy
But how
fight.
exhausted is that, though?
It's
what you just said, like,
yeah.
to lead from a place of grace. Like even like you're mentioning, like I'm the person that everyone calls. Yeah. You know, that has to be exhausting day in and day out. That you're the token black guy that all your white friends get a call and go, "How are you? What do you want? What should I do?" And X, Y, or Z. And I'll get into some other things I'm asking our church to do specifically about this topic. But even for you, like how often is like it's exhausting to lead from grace
100%.
day in and day out.
I was showing my wife once the George Floyd stuff hit, and I'm from Minneapolis originally too, so it's been I
texted you that day 'cause you're from there.
Yeah, it's been a crazier kind of experience for us as well. But I was like scrolling through my phone and showing my wife like these are all of the white people like sending me their Instagram copy to see if it's okay to post because I want to say the right thing, or like probably 15 to 20 times a day for the last 2 weeks of just like people, and it's really difficult, again, trying to come from this place of grace, because a lot of these people, like, I'm so excited that you're woke now, and like, but like I'm not here to be your white guilt guidance counselor, right? Like, I'm sorry that you're feeling guilty for all this stuff, but like, you can't then come to me and ask me to solve your problem, right? Like, but again, give us a little time. Like, listen, we're going to get it out, and we're all going to get there together. But the sort of like white savior complex is really difficult in corporate America right now as well.
And also for all of us having this conversation from a faith Christian standpoint. Yes. Not only how do I handle this as an employee, as a boss, as a manager, but as the Christian in my department, as the Christian, as the leader. And people know I go to church, and people saw me sing, and people heard me, like, so that adds a whole nother, not only do I need to handle this as a black American to my white counterpart, but as a Christian believing leader.
Yeah, well, and I would ask Christians too to like really also come from a place of grace, because I feel like now the eyes are on us. One mess up, one misstep, and somebody's like, oh, see, I told you they were this way. You know what I mean? Which is an even added pressure. So we as a church community that understand grace and forgiveness and persecution and oppression, it's written into the text that we believe. I think it's our church's call and duty to continually go back to that place in these conversations.
I think one major thing we're trying to do today, and Brianna and Lexi, you guys can speak into this as well, is changing the narrative around Black people. And kind of what she said when it comes from the stem of microaggression. Well, where would a microaggression come from that when a Black male walks by, you'd lock the door? Preset narratives that you were given or told, you know, and we'll get into this later, but I think the greatest way to remedy racism is raising children right. And having Black people in your home and raising children right, where those even preset things about Black people are removed, which then I think in counterpart will start removing those microaggressions because you never think those things to lock your door, to grab your purse. And so why don't you speak in a little bit about that, because that's part of the large conversation today is like we want to change the narrative around Black people and Black community. So Brianna, why don't you speak into that?
Right, so we've kind of alluded to it a lot in the conversation already, but Andrew mentioned it as well, is that being racist is not defined by an isolated event or an incident, it is a system. So coupled with that system, or even birthed from that system, is different narratives that Black people have in America. Some of those are Black people are criminals, Black people aren't beautiful. Talked about that with the dating situation. They're not smart. They don't belong here. They're not valued. And those narratives manifest in so many different ways. We've seen it in the news manifest in someone's murder, George Floyd's murder, many of the other people's murder. It manifests in different ways in dating situations. It manifests in corporate America. That could be someone is passed up for an opportunity, a promotion, because the narrative is that you're not smart enough to be here, you don't belong here. And anytime Black people try to operate outside of that narrative, it's challenged. And so a lot of Black people, and myself included, often feel like we have to work 3, 4, 5 times as hard to do something, and that's because we're constantly challenging, living outside of this narrative that's already being told. And that is also something that we do with everyone. Like, we all have preconceived notions about someone. We all have unconscious biases. Like, that is not gonna go away. It's impossible to not have bias, but the challenge is to surface those biases and acknowledge them. Like, what are you subscribing to an already told narrative about this person, this Black person? And really acknowledging that, because then this person, you're making this person into something that they're not, and you're not listening to their story or what they want. So a personal example for me is I majored in mechanical engineering, and I've interned at a biomechanics lab, and there's also, I think Sasha mentioned it too, there's intersectionalities as well of being Black and a woman. And the engineering or technical space, like STEM, is still very white and very male. And so being a Black woman in that space presents a lot of challenges. But I'll get questions like, well, like, oh, I didn't know women studied engineering. And in, like, oh, women do that? Yeah, so some of those things come up in those situations because I am operating in a situation where there isn't much representation, which we talk about representation a lot, and why that's important, because then it's normalized in a way that, yes, Black people do exist here, they can exist here. And Andrew also alluded to something that was really important too. It's like raising your children. So as I mentioned, racism is a system. It's not an isolated event. Neither is what's going to solve it being an isolated event. It's going to be a journey. We need the same type of energy and process to dismantle it. And that includes everyone, young, old, Black, white, Asian, you name it. So something that we've talked about a little bit for children as well is exposing them to Black and brown skin. That could be something as simple as watching a cartoon that has a Black character, like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse or The Princess and the Frog, or it could be buying a toy that has brown skin, because the media and everything is run by white people still. And so they control that narrative, but it's helping dismantle that, acknowledging it, so that we don't have to fight to operate outside that narrative. So again, the challenge is to ask yourself, like, what narrative are you prescribing to about the person? Are you allowing them to tell their story? Listen to them, acknowledge them, and also support them in what they want to do. And I know Deja has also experienced some things as well, so I'll let you share some of that.
Yeah. So going off what like Brianna said, I think a lot of like reasons why there isn't a lot of representation in a lot of areas because we're told we're going to be nothing, or that we're animals, or if we are going to be something, we're put in boxes. Like I think Sasha can attest to this. Like growing up as an athlete, I was only seen as an athlete, like nothing else. Like no one ever thought I had aspirations that extended the basketball court. Like it was like, oh, you're gonna go play overseas? It's like, no, I'm actually gonna go to school to be a doctor, actually. Like, thank you though, but no, that's not what I'm gonna go do my whole life. But like that's, everyone saw me as a basketball player. That's all they ever saw me as, and that's all they ever would see me as. And so I think that's a narrative we're always putting, like, oh, we're gonna be nothing, an athlete or a gangster or locked up in jail. And so I think there's just always this, I don't know how to explain it, but like we're seeing that we can never do anything. We're not intelligent. Like I had someone tell us that a black person has never invented anything. And I'm like, have you Googled anything? Obviously not, because we have invented a lot of things. And so there's just, I don't know how to explain it, but I think it's sad because a lot of people aren't always mentally strong enough to fight through that. I feel like there's a lot of people who are going to be doctors and were told you can't do it, so they stopped. And there's a lot of people who are going to be, I don't know, a business person or could have cured cancer. I don't know, but like people has said things to them to where they stopped it. They weren't mentally tough to fight through those words. And so I think I'm lucky enough that I was able to, but if you're told your whole life you're going to be nothing, you're no one, you're not loved, you're going to start feeding into those narratives yourself. And so that's why I think as a black community, like we also need to lift each other up because no one else is doing that for us. We're being told every day in school. Like I had no teachers ask me ever about my homework. If I didn't turn it in, it didn't matter. But those white kids, like if they didn't turn their homework, they're calling their parents. Right. And so I think, of course, people are going to flunk out because no one's checking up on them. And so I think things like that just need to be put in perspective that we are humans, we are lovable, we're funny, we are intelligent, right. And we are beautiful, and we can do a lot of different things that what the world doesn't think we can do.
Yeah, you know what you're saying. The narrative you believe is not the true narrative, it's the constant narrative. So if you are told the true narrative 3% of the time and you're told the false narrative 97% of the time, you're going to believe the false narrative because it's consistent. Exactly. And so, you know, even like we've talked about, like that you thought as like a black male, like I can only ever play basketball, rap, or be a gangster, but you wanted to do comics. Right. And you felt like you couldn't do that because black dudes aren't into comics. I have 3 options: rap, you know, be a gangster, or be an athlete. And you wanted to get into comics. You know, so even for you to break out of that narrative, you know, was probably difficult, especially as a young kid.
Yeah, it definitely was, because over time, what I've realized is, like, a lot of times people will say black people are ignorant, but I realized also over time that there was this intentional ignorance that a lot of the white people I would meet are working within that. So, like, seeing what we're going through, but choosing to just watch us go through it and not be on our team or help us out along the way. Because there were a lot of times where I'm realizing, like, okay, you say you want to learn, you say you believe in this, but are you living in a hypocritical fashion in the sense that, like, we need help? And that's why I realized over time that is why we are always lifting one another up, is people just want to be seen. Like, we want to be seen as humans. We want the opportunity to actually achieve certain things. And when you're constantly told what you're not, you start to believe that. And I thank God that I did have my dad there, because he grew up in Watts. And I was telling them the other day, like, my uncle, he grew up with Tookie, and it was like, he would tell me all these stories. My dad said he was the best athlete, their older brother who served 30 years, but he was also an amazing artist. Like, I knew my grandpa was a boxer, but then I found out he was an artist. He fixed cars. Like, a lot of times I was told that this is what a black person is and this is where a black person needs to stay. But changing the narrative, the way that that's going to happen is not just us speaking, people actually having our back. Because if you see someone going through something, you know they're in pain, and you just sit there and watch it, what does that say about what you believe? And I think that God's shown me as well is just that the only way for us to actually even elevate is to work together and collaborate on these things, because a lot of times we just want to be seen, and that's all it comes down to. So.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that, and even to what Deja was saying, back to just growing up in school. I grew up with both my parents in the household and a pretty strong family unit. And my parents were very for education, are still very for education. That's been shoved down my throat since I was a kid. But I remember dealing with, though in my home I was supported on the education standpoint, at my school I wasn't. I've only had one black teacher in my entire life. I'm 23 years old. I've only had one black teacher in my entire life, and he wasn't even fully black. Not that that matters, but like he grew up in a completely different household. He didn't embody maybe that whole thing. And so I remember in 7th grade I had a teacher tell me, and me and so there was like 5 black girls at my entire middle school. And we were like, we gotta have this class together. It was called a block period, and it's 2 classes at the same time with 1 teacher. So you get 2 hours together. We're like, there's only 5 of us, so we gotta stick together. So we change our schedule, we're in this class together, and it's 7th grade. What do you do in 7th grade? You're just messing around most of the day anyways.
Pacific?
And I had this teacher tell me, we were joking around with her, I won't say her name, but we were joking around with her saying like, are you gonna give us an A this semester? Like, we feel like we put in the work, whatever. And she looked us, all 4 or 5 of us, in the eye with no hesitation and said, I give all my black students A's. It's not like you get it on your own.
In 7th grade.
In 7th grade. So to that point, I think it's not that I was never told that I wasn't smart or intelligent, but I never told I was either. It's not that nobody's told me, you're not smart, you can't do this. But no one on the outside of my own family and my own parents and my own support system, no one ever said you are smart and you can do this. I had my own teachers doubting my capability of my intelligence. And that's just one little story in 5 minutes of my life. This is things that I know all of us have experienced on one way or another. It might not have been direct and straight up like, I'm only gonna give you an A because you're black, but teachers that don't believe in us, I think, is a common thing that we might all have had in our life. And that's one thing that I think is also super important, and part of it being a systematic thing and not just one scenario. It's a whole system built for us not really to be successful in.
Yeah. Really today, I think we've shared so much, and it's all been amazing, and that's why I wanted our church to have a conversation. People that you know, people that you serve with, people that you sit next to at church, and people that you love, and that a part of our family is hurting and bleeding and is yelling out to be heard. And I always want our church, I've said it from the very beginning, that I want our church to look like heaven, and I want our church to be not only multi-race, but multi-generational and multi-ethnic, and we could never be put in a box from Democrat, Republican, Independent. Like, we are all coming under one name. No matter all the things that make us different, there's more that make us together, and that is also the name of Jesus. And that's what we're trying to do at this church. And so I hope many of you sitting at home or sitting at host homes all across the city have stayed this whole time and just listened, even if you've disagreed or had questions, and even like maybe you're at your home like, this and just listen. Open your ears, open your heart, and listen to our community. And really, I want to kind of land this plane today and kind of ask you the question, what do you want? If you could say in 1 or 2 sentences, not from corporate America, because I don't run corporate America, not from your jobs, I'm not your boss, but from church, from this family, from this conversation, if you could sum up and everybody has to go around, and I can't wait to hear from Gloria, the youngest person here, who's about to graduate high school.
Come on.
And do Rose Leadership College. I'm just kidding. She said, come on, Gloria. All right, I'll finish today. We'll talk later. If you could say in 1 or 2 sentences, like, this is what I want. This is what I want from church, from this family. This is what I'm hoping for. This is this is what I want. And I'll go last. So like, why don't you start, and we'll just go around.
Something I've been saying and I want to say is that We are not looking for revenge, but we are begging for reconciliation. That is my prayer. That is my heart. I'm a black girl that's been in white spaces my entire life and in Christian white spaces. And I just want people to get that I'm not fighting against you. I want you to be with me in this. And I think prayer is a big part of it, but action and just choosing, you don't have to change overnight because it's not going to work, but just choosing to try to understand, to try to be better, just be better tomorrow. That's all we're asking. That's what I'm asking. And to know that there is difficulties in my life that that you not necessarily can understand, but you can stand with me in trying to make it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dawn, what do you want?
I want a lot of stuff. $1 million now.
We'll talk about that later.
Wow. You know, boy, you said it very well. What I want is the love of Jesus, because you're talking specifically from our church. I want the love of Jesus to resonate through every person in our church, to be patient, you're starting to acknowledge, not everyone, but you're starting to acknowledge what's going on. And I love the story of the 100 sheep. When Jesus was looking at the 100 sheep, one sheep got away. Well, Jesus went after the one. We're not forgetting about the 99. We know you have your needs and things too, but he went after the one to bring that one back home. I want the church to understand we're that one and help bring us back home.
It's awesome. What do I want? That's a good question. I think I just want people to take a look at themselves, check yourself, check your biases, check your friend groups. I think that it's important that you recognize this moment and take a moment for self-reflection. To Andrew's point earlier, I feel like there's not racist or not racist. There's racist or anti-racist. And if you're in the middle, you ain't helping. Right. Yeah. So pick a side, right? If you ain't helping, you ain't helping. So I guess that's just my plea to the churches is have the hard conversation with yourself. Ask if there's moments in your life where, maybe I have acted microaggressively or haven't been as supportive to my community, as I think it starts there.
I would say just remind yourself that Christianity is not a spectator sport. Like, get out of the stands, because as much as people may even talk good about Ali, I know he wasn't a Christian, but they don't realize what was going on at the time, and people were actually trying to kill him. And if we're going to speak from a Christian perspective, Martin Luther King, like, people can repost every single quote by Martin, but they forget that he was marching as well. Like, they're great quotes, but he was marching. He put his faith into action, you know. We always say actions over words, but that is truly what it is, like realizing that this is also a kingdom thing too. It's not just talking about black people. We really want to win people for Christ, and we're here on your team. We just want to not only be acknowledged, but know you're on our team too. Like, that's what a family is. Like, they say we're the body of Christ. We're also part of that body. We're one of those limbs. Like, extend your hand towards us, and as much as it's been said, practice what you preach. So.
For me, it's like, some people have the choice and the option. Like, this has been a loaded week, last couple of weeks, and people have the choice and the option to say, okay, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to set this aside. I need to recoup. But this is stuff I have to deal with. I don't have the option to choose whether or not I'm going to deal with this. I have to think about this in every day and on my everyday actions and how I go about it. Like, I'm black. This is the face I wear. This is me. And so I guess my request is, like, especially in the church, every action you make, whether that's with Black people or when they're not around, make sure you have that in consideration. I have to have this in consideration every single day of my life. And when you move, when you speak, when you're around your friends, I pray that you keep that in consideration. Keep us in consideration in everything that you do. Even in your prayer, I pray for the Black community. Like, you can acknowledge, you can say you're not racist, but like, what are we gonna do as a family? Like, how can we do this? Go get the last sheep. Like, always keep us in your mind. Like, this isn't a choice for me. I have to live like this. This is me. Like, and not that I'm ashamed. I'm proud to be Black, but that's acknowledgement and everything. Accountability and acknowledgement. That's me.
For me, for church specifically, I would say if we all believe that we're God's workmanship, then treat us as such. You know, basically echoing some of what people have said is uncover your biases, acknowledge them, and dismantle them. And a lot of these things are rooted in hate and negativity, and love is really the answer, as maybe generic as that may sound, but that's what we want to do in the church. We want to have a safe space to feel like we can be our authentic selves. So those are my asks.
I would say my ask from the church would be to have my back, and that means outside of these walls. Because I think a lot of you guys or white counterparts, I need you to acknowledge white privilege and then weaponize it. Because unfortunately, you speaking out about what's going on holds way more weight if I were to speak out on it. And so I think I need you guys to be my voice outside for me, because I can't do it by myself. So I need you guys to have my back for sure.
I would say one thing I want is put your big boy pants on, because I'm not gonna hold your hand. I'm not taking you around and around and telling you, I'm not gonna tell you, if you drop something, I'm not gonna tell you to pick it up. You're grown. You know what you do, why you do it. There's no, I wasn't thinking, there's no, this is that and the third. If you're over the age of, let's say, 15, then at that point, you know what your action, the consequences of your actions. Right. You can't say one thing on Black people and then say, oh, I was just kidding. You know exactly what you said. You know why you said it, and just multiple things. And like, I understand, like, all together we're trying to be like very, I don't know, peaceful, but I'm not gonna sit here and act like I'm not mad, because I have been mad for the past, how old am I? 17 years. And it's just like very frustrating that I'm still having to tell people to read a book or just do certain things to figure out what's going on with the people that you're interacting with every Sunday, because you're going to a church that has Black people. You at least see one of us. At least one of us is here every Sunday. So it's not like you've never come in contact with Black people, period. And if you haven't, you are right now. So just acknowledge the fact that you need to do your part, and you don't need a Black person standing next to you every single time. Like, as Deja was saying, you need to take it outside of not only church, but outside of us. What do you do when we're not around? What do you do when your friends are making the little comments, the little jokes? Are you still backing us up the same way you would back us up if we were there? Like, don't put on a show, don't put on a mask, don't make it a parade to say, oh, like, I'm anti-racist and I have Black friends, and don't use that excuse because you sound really dumb. But just genuinely do what you need to do and do it 24/7, live it out. And at first it's probably gonna feel like you're walking on eggshells because you're seeing everything that you used to do and you're finally looking in the mirror. But eventually those eggshells are gonna move and you're gonna be walking free and just walking around and saying, you know what, I do this with ease. I don't have to think about it anymore because I love not just Black people, but people in general. I love people, so I'm not just gonna stand for what you're doing against a certain group.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can follow up on that.
Yeah, good luck.
No, just I think what everyone said, I think it proves very valid, and you know, I think that's a representation of all of us. Yes, we all have a commonality in our skin color, but we're asking different things of everybody else, and the difference of asking for this stuff is just like it encompasses everything that we've dealt with and been through. So for me, my ask is be uncomfortable. definitely be uncomfortable, because as Black people, we're uncomfortable every day. Every day. Every day. Me, like, walking around the neighborhood, I'm living in the suburbs. Well, you know, I haven't been out that much.
Yeah, you haven't been out in 12 weeks, but you came out tonight. So I'm thankful for that.
What I'm saying? But it's a constant thing that I think about, is just like the story of Ahmad, him going out to run. So, and that situation happening to him. All right, cool. When I'm going out, I'm not wearing black in the neighborhood. I'm wearing a bright color. You know, if someone says hi to me, you know, my hand going up, saying hi to them. It's like, so you see me in my eyes, you know, but it's being uncomfortable that this is something that's part of all of our lives, and it's time for the white community and our white counterparts to, one, as Asia says, stand with us outside of church and be uncomfortable. That's if you're comfortable, you're not going to change. And in order for us to get to where we have to get to today, and for our generations to come after us, everyone has to be uncomfortable. Have those uncomfortable conversations. Learn, even if you're not doing it right, even if you mess up, you say the wrong thing. Okay, learn from that situation, and when you approach us again, come correct and say how you learned from that mistake. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just be uncomfortable and just learn from the opportunity. And we're all wanting change, and help us get that change that we more than deserve.
Absolutely. I think, you know, we can continue down this conversation, but I think what I want is, as the pastor of this community, number one, I hope that you've stayed this whole time and that you've watched this entire conversation. Two, my hope is that Sunday would stop being the most segregated day of the week. Still, Sunday at 11 a.m. is still probably the most segregated hour of the whole week. And, you know, I'm praying that church will begin to unite and stay together. And, you know, my request too is not that you would go to a diverse church, is that you would live a diverse life. I think it would be shameful of us to come to a church and do church with black and brown people and think our lives are diverse. If you come to a building with black and brown people and then go back to your completely white life, we are not fixing anything at all. And so my prayer is that this would go beyond just a church conversation, and would be your conversation at your home, at your table, with your friends. And I'll end reading Amos chapter 5, verses 21. It says, I hate and despise your feasts. This is God talking. I hate and despise your feasts. I take no delight in your solemn assemblies. Even though you offer me burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them. And the peace offerings, I will not look upon them. Take away from me the noise of your songs. This is church. Worship, noise, offerings, feasts, assemblies. To the melody of your harps, I will not listen. And he ends this, but let justice roll like rivers, and let righteousness ever flow like the waters. I'm praying that as we talk and have further discussions, that justice will roll like rivers, and that righteousness will flow like the sea. I want to pray today as we end. I want to pray for you at home, wherever you're watching with a bunch of people, and you might be crying at this point. It's awkward. Just look away real quick. You might be at your home by yourself with you and your spouse. You might be in your car on your way to work, wherever you're at. And I hope today, as we had our conversation, that your heart has been opened, your mind has been opened, and that for some of you, to be quite honest, deep repentance is soaring. And you are considering your life and considering language and your narrative that you have believed or subconsciously believed, didn't even know that that was there. And so today I want to pray as we end our time together. Father, I thank you for our church. I thank you for these amazing people in this circle, God, that are family to me and family to Julia and family to our church, God. And I pray that you would do a work not only in the nations and in America, and God, but ultimately we're praying for our church, the community of Rose, that you are building and developing and growing into a family, God. And we've said it from the very beginning that we want our church to look and sound and feel like heaven, that every race, creed, tribe, and tongue would be together under one name, the name of Jesus, celebrating and laughing. God, if there is anything, those biases, those even microaggressions, those preconceived notions we have toward black people or people of color as a whole, God, would you surgically remove it from our heart? Would you bring repentance to our mind, repentance to our heart, God? Would you help us lead with love? Would you help us lead with patience and grace and also strength and might, God? We thank you for what you're doing in our church. In your mighty, mighty name I pray. Amen. Amen. Love you guys. I'll talk to you in a second.
What an awesome conversation. And I know it was maybe a little long, but I hope you stayed this entire time and our church is still with us right now. And, as we end this conversation, I really want to really pray that you did open your heart, you open your ears, your mind, and consider some things that were shared by our family, by people that we love and care about, we serve with, go to church with, attend life with, and hope it really challenged some people and open up your eyes and ears to some things going on. And I want to ask our church simply really quick, just 4 things right now as we end this conversation. Number 1 is if you can Google new restaurants, you can Google history. What I mean by that is you have a phone, and we should not put all of our education on our Black community to train us, equip us. Listen, if you can Google new restaurants, if you can Google ways not to have a pimple last longer than 3 days, you know how to use a phone, okay? You can Google history and find out more about what is going on. Here's just some things that you can watch, some movies that you can watch about what is going on with our Black community. 13th on Netflix, Black Panther, When They See Us, Just Mercy, 42 is a phenomenal movie. If you haven't seen it yet, Remember the Titans is an amazing movie about what is going on and some things, some racial tones, what's going on. Here's some books that you can read. Right Fragility, The Third Option. Amazing. He's a pastor. His father is a cop. His son is a cop. He's a pastor in San Diego. Read The Third Option. The New Jim Crow. There's an article out there called The Racist History of Portland about what that is. If you have some kids, some amazing movies is Spider-Verse, Hair Love, Hidden Figures. Some books to read is Hair Like Mine, Skin Like Mine, I'm Enough, and many, many more. But please, if you can Google things about your life, you can Google history that deeply matters to me and deeply matters to you to further your education. Please don't just be that guy calling your Black friends, Black coworkers and neighbors to have them educate you. Take it upon yourself because it matters. Number 2 is white privilege is not white guilt. If you're sitting today like, I feel really guilty about being white and I'm sorry, and as we said, I'm not racist, I wasn't there 400 years ago, I feel guilty of being white. That is not the purpose whatsoever. You should not feel guilty. I do not subscribe to that narrative whatsoever. You should not feel guilty about being white, but we do need to admit that there is a thing called white privilege. If you're wondering what that is, a man said it this way and it really helped me, that if you're right-handed, I am. Everything we do in America, even the world, is built toward a right-handed person. If you're left-handed, you have to go out of your way to find left-handed clubs. To write on a desk that doesn't have the right-hand part, right? You have to write a different way. To swing left-handed to swing clubs, to have a left-handed mitt, a left-handed guitar. Everything is built toward a right-handed person in mind. And that's a very simple way to think about America was built with white people in mind. And that we just need to admit there's privilege about being white. There are things that we get to not think about because we're white. I'm not subscribing to feel guilty that I'm white, and I don't think our Black community is asking that either. But we do need to admit there is privilege to being a white person in America. Number 3, awareness is helpful, but action is transformational. You could have all the awareness today, read some books, watch some shows, read some articles, listen to some podcasts. Awareness is awesome, but action is transformational. What I mean by that is have some friends of the other race, of people of color, Black and brown people in your home with your kids. Go on a vacation, having lunch, asking questions. Involve yourself. Let it not just be information. Let it be action that you are moving, that you are exposing yourself to Black community, Black culture, and Black people. Let us not love Black culture, but not love Black people. We need to love Black people for who they are and have them involved in our lives. And so please don't just be aware, have action. You'll be hearing some more things from us about more resources and things that we're doing when it comes to some people here in Portland that we're going to start partnering with. You'll hear more about that next weekend, but we're going to have some action steps for our church to be. Number 4, if silence is hurtful, silence is as hurtful as the act itself. Some of you are like, well, I don't say things or do things, but silence is as hurtful as the act itself. And I don't mean just retweeting and reposting and commenting, yes and amen, that's all good. But I mean when comments are made that you speak up. When racial slurs or things with racial undertones or microaggressions or just negative comments or ill statements that shouldn't be made, don't just, well, I didn't make it. No, don't sit in silence. Speak up. Protect our black brothers and sisters and protect our family members. And so that is 4 things I'm asking our church to do. Number 1 is educate yourself. Educate yourself. Number 2, understand that white privilege is real and it's not white guilt, but understand we do have an upper hand and we need to acknowledge it and act upon it. Number 3 is action. Expose yourself, move, have people in your life, ask questions. If you're like, I'm really scared to ask the wrong question, it's okay. Stumble, get up, ask again. I would rather have conversation and have it not go perfect than have no conversation. Move forward, take steps forward. And lastly, speak up. Speak up about things that are going on in your workplace, in your home, in your neighbors, and it can be risky. You can lose relationship. It can be awkward at dinner tables. It can be awkward with spouses, but speak up. Silence is as hurtful as the act itself. Thank you for being here today. I love you, church. Thank you for joining in with us on this conversation, this family conversation, that we are doing our part to love our black community and to be like Jesus and lead with love. Have an awesome Sunday. Be here next week. It is Father's Day. We have a phenomenal service planned for next Sunday. We'll see you there.
Give me a minute of your time, a slight schedule adjustment, because I'm seeking justice, or is it just us? How is it we never met, yet you already decided that you don't trust us? I mean, I'm just barely scratching the surface. And speaking of my surface, God made my skin on purpose. 6'4", tattoos, let me guess, I got you nervous. Lord knows if I raise my voice, they got their popcorn ready like, hey look, there go one of the acts from the local circus. We ask when will they see us, not guilt yourself to serve us. Yeah, I got a degree, and although it's not to become a mathematician, I do know the answer to a very specific problem. When you add to our subtraction, you take part in division. And if sin is the root, then your actions reveal the symptoms. I told you, all I needed was a minute of your time. And according to my clock, I finished by 59.